The UConn Huskies are the only undefeated team in the nation right now.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball, your number one podcast for daily women's basketball. Alongside me is Sophia Jones, the Golden State Valkyries analyst. I'm Clea Butler, the sideline reporter for the Chicago Sky. And our overview for today, we're going to get into some Unrivaled recap. We're also going to talk about the mid-season women's basketball player rankings. We have some of your top NCAA players on that list. Apologies if you hear my dog in the back. She's really excited to talk about Sarah Strong and AZ Fudd and all that good fun stuff today. But first, we're going to get into today's AP poll. There's been some shifts. Obviously, those top teams are pretty consistent, starting out with obviously none other than UConn, who has continued to be the unanimous number one vote. They are the only team that remains undefeated after Vanderbilt lost to South Carolina. They have a 21-0 record, which is one of their best starts that they have had for a couple of seasons, but also they're on, since last year, I believe it's over 30 game win streak right now, carrying on from last year. And so it's really hard to not choose them as the number one overall pick.
Yeah, it almost seems like an easier and easier decision to have and cement UConn at that number one spot as the season progresses. The main competition around December was Texas. They had the wins against South Carolina and UCLA, but then Texas went and lost to LSU and South Carolina. So UConn definitely standing alone in that number one spot. But at number two, UCLA is starting to creep themselves up as well. They've been dominant in the Big Ten. Their only loss of the season came to Texas back in, I think, late November. So they're looking extremely strong.
Yeah, to correct myself on that, it is over 30, but they have won 37 straight games dating back to last season. We talk about UCLA moving up to number two after South Carolina lost in overtime to Oklahoma, who from that they jumped 6 spots to number 10. Then obviously South Carolina beating Vanderbilt. So it kind of evens things out for them in a sense. But another team that we want to mention on here is Duke, who has secretly climbed their way back into the top 20. We saw them kind of have a rocky start to their season. They started off really strong. Then they had dropped a good portion of games. And obviously, we've talked about before, head coach Kara Lawson kind of talking about this team trying to find their groove a little bit. But I think as they've gotten into ACC play and they're in the full swing of it, they have become much more comfortable in that league. And right now, if you're looking at the most dominant teams in the ACC, it's between them and Louisville.
Definitely. And it was right around that LSU game also at the beginning of December. We both said that Duke, they're losing to a lot of these ranked teams, but it looks like they're slowly starting to turn the corner. And I think that progress has really manifested itself in this current stretch that they're in. They've won 11 straight. Pretty much since that LSU game, they have not dropped a matchup. Some really notable wins against Notre Dame in this month of January. So they're putting together a solid resume. But like you said, the biggest competition right now in the ACC that they'll have to go up against is Louisville. Some other really strong competitors as well they can be tested against, for example, North Carolina or an NC State, even Notre Dame again. But Duke definitely hitting their stride now, which is exactly what you want to achieve as a basketball team headed into March.
Absolutely. Just to kind of recap, UConn is sitting at number one, obviously. UCLA at number two. South Carolina 3, Texas 4, Vanderbilt 5, LSU 6, Louisville 7, Iowa 8, Michigan 9, Oklahoma 10. That makes up the top 10 right now. Another good one to point out is Iowa. They were sitting at number 10. They moved their way up to number 8. Obviously, they've been on a fantastic run themselves. One of the only other undefeated teams within Big Ten play. They have been on an absolute roll, and we were talking about them yesterday with UCLA. They're one of the only other teams in the Big Ten right now that are kind of having very comfortable wins against other opponents. They'll face each other on Sunday this week, so that's going to be an exciting test, and we'll see some shifts in the polls after that as well. But some news for them: Taylor McCabe tore her ACL in that last game against Ohio State. Sophia, you had mentioned her, obviously a contributor, starter for this team. And when you're looking at the depth that Iowa has, that's going to hurt them a little bit.
Definitely. And specifically with the way that Iowa plays, very half court based. They like to emphasize their front court players a lot. And McCabe, she's a career 40.7% 3-point shooter. So she really helps with their floor spacing. They dominated Ohio State. She essentially went down the first play of the game, and her team rallied around her to have a large margin of victory. So they've proven that they can win without her. However, it's a question of how sustainable that is, because once you start getting into the thick of seasons, rotations get shorter. You look at your bench and that depth, and you see McCabe and the lack of Taylor McCabe, and that'll be a pretty big blow for them. They're managing right now, but we'll see how long they can continue to tread water, because they've really had a pretty large rise to shoot themselves into the top 10 at the number 8 spot.
Yeah. Another team that's kind of snuck into the polls as well is Georgia, who is coming in ranked 23rd in the country right now. And to be honest, they're also a team that was kind of slipping under my radar as well. But they're the Lady Bulldogs. They are the top 25 for the first time since 2022. They started the season 14-0 in non-conference play for the first time in 16 years. And they had victories against number 17 Ole Miss, and during these times in number 18 Kentucky. And you may ask, how has Georgia been able to come to this rise? Well, they hit the transfer portal pretty hard this year. One of their most notable transfers is coming from Georgia Tech in Danny Carnegie. She leads the team in scoring and is among the SEC leading in 3-pointers. She stretches the defense, obviously, with her shooting ability, but overall, they have come in and kind of just made a name for themselves in an already very difficult conference, a conference that is coming in breaking records with having 10 teams ranked in the top 25 polls.
And for Georgia, when you are such a transfer portal dominant and heavy team, it's understandable why it is now during the season that everything is really starting to click for them. During non-conference, that's what you usually do to figure out team chemistry, build it, develop it. And once you get into conference play, that's when you really need to start making things shake. And that's exactly what Georgia has done. I think that the group of transfers that they brought in, they count for a majority of Georgia's scoring, also lifting the defense, but they've just really started clicking. And like I said, it takes a little bit of time for sometimes that chemistry to develop, and it's doing exactly that right now.
Yeah. Excited to see what this upcoming week of games is going to do to the poll once again, especially that Iowa UCLA matchup. I think that is definitely the most notable one of the week, and we will be happy to recap that and preview that later on in the week. But coming up after this, it was another day in Unrivaled. So let's get into some of those stats. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. If you're someone like me, who Sophia has said before, I'm kind of a new adult, I like to hand these things off to my mom, but TurboTax is making it a lot easier for me to be a little bit more independent when it comes to my taxes this year. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit tax.com/local to book your appointment today. Okay, Monday recap in Unrivaled. We had already had an exciting weekend of games. And right after the breeze, was on top of the world. We had Paige, we had Dom absolutely killing. They unfortunately lost to the Laces. But the Laces are looking like a tough team to get past. Alyssa Thomas was the one to hit the game-winning layup. And she was just dominant throughout as well. She had 17 points, but a player that really came in to contribute was Brittany Sykes. She had 29 points on the day, 3 for 8 from 3, 12 of 26 from the field. So she was absolutely shooting that thing. But Jackie Young had kind of fell out in this game, but we can't forget that Slim is one of the top players in the league still, and she came in and showed exactly why.
Exactly. And like you said, Jackie Young, she was a little bit shaken up. So you needed a boost in the backcourt, and Brittany Sykes helped to provide exactly that. Those 29 points were huge. And she gets it done on both ends of the floor, which is another reason why I think she's so dangerous and really thrives in Unrivaled. Because if you look at Brittany Sykes, she just looks like she should also be a long jumper in track and field or run the 400 meters. She is so extremely athletic, has great reach, and all of those combined to make her a really locked down defender. And the Laces were one of the teams that I got to see in person at Unrivaled as well. And I was sitting right behind their bench. There's a lot of talking that goes on that the cameras don't pick up. And in the Sephora Arena, it's very intimate. So I'll just say a lot of things that I picked up, you hear the amount of competitiveness that is on Laces. And I think that alone makes it very hard to beat them.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at the makeup of the roster, you have 2 players that were just in the finals, in Alyssa Thomas and Jackie Young. So they are not there to play around, I'm sure. On the other side, for the Breeze, Paige Beckers obviously putting up numbers, had 22 points. Dom Malonga came in, had 18 points. Kate Martin kind of finally getting her groove into this roster a little bit. She had 10 points. Miss Money Martin, we know that she can go get a bucket too. Cam Brink had 11 points. We didn't see Rakia Jackson in this one, which was a player obviously that has kind of contributed in that spot, but I think this gave an opening for Kate Martin to get going a little bit more.
Definitely. One of the things that she always emphasized during her time at the Valkyries when I would speak to her is that she always prioritized staying ready. And that was exactly what I saw in her game with the Breeze here against the Laces. She is always ready to shoot. She always has textbook form as well. And she just has a great shot. And like you said, I think this is a really good game for her to find that rhythm again. But because Breeze, they have so much height on that team. There was a lot of times that they went into a Paige and then Cam Brink and Dom Malonga lineup. So a little bit of a double big if you talk about the Twin Towers, but that is a really tough lineup to get against. And I actually like the minutes that those two play together.
When you talk about Kate Martin, I think she's just one of my favorite storylines in the WNBA in general. Just her, not even knowing if she's going to get drafted, and then her kind of just becoming a phenomenon in her own right. Obviously, going to the Aces, being on the Valkyries now. And I've had great experience with all the WNBA players that I have come across. But I will say, talking to her pregame, I know players do not want to talk to me. Like, trust me, I'm a media member. I understand they don't really want to talk to me, but I have to do my job while they're doing theirs. She is probably one of the most humble players I have ever met in my life. And again, I know players aren't necessarily excited to talk to me in that moment, but she was just so attentive to all my questions. She was so thorough. I just thought I had such a fantastic experience with her, and I just feel like it translates to exactly who she presents herself in all aspects, between on the court, off the court, whatever the case may be. So I'm glad to see Money Martin doing her thing out there.
No, exactly. I would have to agree with you. She is an extremely down-to-earth player. There was one time, I'm sure you're aware, where sometimes media and players will just be jumbled into one area with given no direction. And so this was during the summer, but me and her just got to talking about Love Island a little bit. And that's just the kind of banter and humanness that Kate Martin presents. And exactly like you said, that is reflected in the way that she plays and how hard she plays, and the fact that she always stays ready.
Yeah, we love you, Queen. Just know you have fans in us. Another one between the Lunar Owls and the Hive. Two teams that have struggled in Unrivaled so far this season, but the Hive coming out on top. Sonia Citron had 14 points in that one. Kelsey Mitchell, 17. Natisha Heidemann, 20. Who else am I forgetting? Monique Billings had 16 points in this one. Kelsey Mitchell was the one to have the game-winning shot. The Hive, I understand that they've kind of had a difficult start, but they have all the right pieces. I think some games it showcases more that they are clicking. Other games they're still kind of trying to learn how to maneuver in this kind of playing format, I guess. But when you have a Kelsey Mitchell on your team who literally can get it done on every single aspect of the idea of just being able to get something done, she's going to find a will to win. We saw her do it with the Fever. She put her body on the line. She's not going to not do this at Unrivaled.
Exactly. She is one of the fastest players with the ball in her hands across different basketball courts, I will say, because Unrivaled is a little bit condensed, but she is an extremely tough person to stay in front of. She's been the main scoring threat for the Hive, but I also thought it was Natisha Heidemann's breakout Unrivaled game. She mentioned that Courtney Williams was courtside, so she said she needed her there at every game. Of course, they're playing against the Lunar Owls, led by Skylar Diggins. So I think that Natisha Heidemann, to have this breakout game, she finished with those 20 points. She was really crucial. And that unit with Heidemann, Kelsey Mitchell, and Mo Billings to close the game for Hive, I think also worked really well. But one of the things I'm noticing in Unrivaled is that between every game, it is so matchup based that you never know which player can go off just because they like who the other person on the floor is.
Yeah, and I like that you brought up Natisha Heidemann and obviously playing up against Skylar Diggins and all of that, their first interactions. It's basically equivalent of, when players are supposed to play better when there's like a courtside baddie there, you know what I mean? But you're actually playing against your crush, even though, they're kind of in an in-between area right now because Skylar didn't really give her a time of day.
Hey, she said that was out the window. Those are her words.
Exactly. Out the window, over with. But you're talking about baddie chains yesterday or the day before. Today is stud bud chains. You switch out the baddie chain for a stud bud chain. Sonia Citron obviously was already wearing it. But unfortunately, the Hive had to take it they kept it in this one. They didn't have to give up their baddie chain or their stud bud chains. They kept it. And I know she probably feels a little bit good because Skylar Diggins still put 27 points up on them. Marina Mabry had 21 points. Aaliyah Edwards had 18. And that's kind of been the standout trio that we have seen to kind of carrying this team. I think when we've seen the Lunar Owls kind of clicking, it's when everybody has gotten involved, when you have Beck Allen able to contribute a little bit more, Rachel Bannon being able to contribute a little bit more, but it's kind of been those dominant three in a Mabry, Edwards, and being able to get Diggins back out on the court.
Yeah, I think Skylar Diggins, her minutes have been increasing every game. She didn't start the season just with a little bit of injury. And so it was mainly Edwards and Mabry holding it down, but she's really starting to get into the mix now. And it's a large gap to fill because you do not have Nafisa Collier on your team, who is out because she's getting ankle surgeries. Every time they show her on the bench and she is in a boot, I'm like, oh, Fee. But they are like, it's still very possible for any of these teams to win on any given night. And I think the same way I commented on the competitiveness of the Laces just being and sitting behind their bench. If you have Marina Mabry and Skylar Diggins specifically on your team, that is a lot of feistiness to carry you at times.
A lot of fire, but unfortunately it was extinguished by the Hive yesterday. We'll see if they can get back into it this upcoming weekend. But stay with us because UConn sophomore Sarah Strong has topped ESPN's preseason rankings of the 25 best players in women's college basketball. And we're going to get into the rest of the list as well.
There's nothing like being in the NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast, without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. You just pull up the Game Time app, pick up an upcoming NBA game, and have the tickets locked within minutes. I live pretty close to Chase Center. I drove for the majority of my games that I worked with the Valkyries, but the Warriors play there as well. And I was there the other day. And can we just talk about how much these in-arena concessions have elevated? I had an amazing set of tacos and garlic fries. So if you're not that interested in the actual game going on, get you some concessions. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com.
She got it today, you guys. .co, not .com. I could see the emphasis on it. You were right. You hit it right on the dot.
I was like, this is not going to get me again. And you know what? It really stuck out for me. It's .co, not .com.
Listen, it's a tough one. That would get me too. So you're doing great.
Thank you.
But when we're looking ahead at this kind of mid-season rankings of the best players in women's college basketball right now, we're also thinking of what the preseason list looked like. And it has not changed because Sarah Strong was the number one ranking on the preseason list, and she's also the number one ranking for the mid-season list. And let's just get into a little bit of why that has not changed. She's averaging 18 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, 60% from the field. But we can't forget that she's also one of the best assisters on the Huskies team right now as well. We saw her get comfortable in spacing the floor, and she's hit some threes this season. She is just somebody that is not only incredibly hard to get past, but there's almost no defending her because she always has something. She has a move, and then she has a counter move. As soon as you just try to figure out exactly what she's going to do, she's going to find a different way to get around you. She has been one of the most dominant players she is the best player on the best team in the country, and that doesn't look like it's going to budge anytime soon.
I would have to agree. I think she's the best player on the best team, and she's been a real key reason for UConn's success. Strong is just a cerebral player overall that offensively and defensively, you can see where she's orchestrating everything, making sure people are on the same page. She's actually the top rated defensive player in the country according to her hoop stats. So she is just clicking on all cylinders. And the fact that she is only a sophomore is so great for the trajectory on what she can be. And yeah, she just sees plays and sees the floor so well that you don't see very often in sophomores. Her IQ is in another plane.
I 100% agree with you. And when you're looking at these top 3 that are in consideration right now, it's a pretty young group. The next one is Madison Booker, who is a junior for Texas. She's averaging 19 points per game, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists. And what I love most is obviously these last 2 players that I just mentioned are forwards. But the versatility that both of them have is unmatched. I talk about Sarah Strong being a great assister and facilitator. So is Madison Booker. These are 2 players that are on the top teams in the nation right now that are kind of doing all the heavy lifting, but they have a very good crew behind them too. But when you're looking at who the star is, these are the names that come to mind. She's also the reigning SEC player of the year. She's having a career high. She's having a career season. She's had a lot of improvements just from last year in scoring, rebounding, playmaking, and defense, and just overall has kind of just been a player that you can't not have on the court for Texas.
1,000%. She averages so many minutes for them. So important to be that main offensive threat. Also talking about her length on defense. She has a lateral quickness, even as a 6'1" forward. She has the reach to really go up against some of these top players. But offensively, another player that just gets into her bag. The Texas offense sets her up perfectly. But at the end of the day, if a play breaks down and you need a bucket at the end of the shot clock, she'll just take you one-on-one and score. And I think that is a real beauty to Madison Booker's game.
Speaking of taking you one-on-one and scoring and getting to a bucket when you need her, Michaela Blakes is sitting at 3rd. She's the 3rd in the nation in scoring. Obviously, she drove Vanderbilt to a historic 17-0 start. They just had their first loss to South Carolina, but she is allowing Vanderbilt to kind of get back on the map. I mean, they haven't had a Final Four run since the early 1990s. She has the ability to score. She can create for others. And I think we've seen her get better on the defensive end as well this season. We know that she can score. I don't think there's a question when it comes to that, when you're one of the leading scorers in the nation and you can create so many shots for yourself. And honestly, she does well at playing in space, but you don't even need to give her a lot of space. She's going to create it for herself. And if you give her even the slightest inch, that thing is green. She is shooting it.
1,000%. She scores at all 3 levels. Like you said, doesn't hesitate. So you give her an inch of space anywhere, she is taking exactly what the defense gives you. But like you said, I've definitely noticed an improvement in her defense this year. She's putting a lot more pressure on the backcourt. I would say for Vanderbilt, it was really huge to get Aubrey Galvin and have her perform as well, because she takes a lot of those point guard responsibilities off of Blake's. She can play a little bit more off ball, has a little bit more energy on the defensive end. So definitely starting to see Blake's game round out more, but she is an extremely dangerous player.
Some other players in consideration: AZ Fudd, of course, Olivia Miles, Lauren Betts, Hannah Hidalgo, Audie Crooks, Joyce Edwards, and Rory Harmon all make up the top 10 during the mid-season. But it's a hard list to choose from. We'll continue to see how the rest of the season goes, especially as we approach March Madness. But that'll do it for us today on Locked On Women's Basketball. Thank you guys so much for joining. We will see you guys again tomorrow.